Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I am so happy that it is spring, but I'm even happier that while spring is here, you're listening to this program today, because in the Zoom booth with me on Act 3 today is Allison Hexter, and we're going to talk about the Red Heart Breakfast. Hey, Allison, how's it going?
Hi, Kathy. It's going great. How are you?
I am delicious, thank you, as always. At least that's what I'm telling myself today. Listen, Allison, you and I have had the great luxury of talking together and working together, and not talking together, but actually working together for Shine 2022. Let's talk a little bit about how all of that stuff has transpired and where we are now with the Red Heart Breakfast. What's that?
Well, that's a great question, Kathy. So the Red Heart Breakfast has come about through AVI Health Services here in Nanaimo, and our producer of Shine, Dean Filner, in conversation of what's happening in our community and what's going on, especially with women who are experiencing homelessness.
Yes.
So, joining forces in creating a breakfast where members of the community can come together and hear some guest speakers and enjoy a breakfast.
But it's more than just having something to eat, right? The premise
Yes,
behind this breakfast is really, much like Shine 2022, it was an opportunity for community to come together, right? And to be able to support community through not only their artistic creativity, but their ability, actually, from a Shine perspective, it was the artistic creativity, but their ability to give back to community. And so I know for sure that the breakfast itself is also a huge fundraiser. Like, the idea is to bring some dollars to this really important conversation, right?
exactly. We do request that you donate at the breakfast to either a monthly donation of $20 for a year, or a one-time donation for the one fiscal year in support of women who are homelessness.
So what do we know about the homeless population and women in our community that are experiencing this situation? Are the numbers that high?
You would be surprised. I don't
Yeah,
have the complete statistics
yeah,
of the numbers here in Nanaimo, but the women who are homelessness, they're unseen. Uh,
yes,
you know, they're coming from homes of volatile situations,
yeah,
or we look at the impact of COVID and people are losing their jobs and there's no housing, or the rent has gone up so much,
yeah.
right? So that's where we're sitting at. And then we add on to that mental health and addiction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's the part that people don't really understand. That, I know that for a lot of people in community, people are like one paycheck away from being in a poverty situation and not really understanding just how deeply that can impact not only their own ability to keep the roof over their head, but as women, we're still in that society where
Oh,
where it's harder, just harder all the way around, and we're constantly looking for solutions, right? And AVI is leading the edge on this, is that right?
you're right. They've come to us, and they're such a great center to have here in Nanaimo. They're meeting women at the ground level, and they're creating programs for women within Nanaimo by women. So, they're feeling seen and heard. They're meeting with their peers.
Yes, yes. And I did notice actually with AVI that during COVID in particular, because AVI is actually AIDS Vancouver Island, and while AIDS was a big part of their mandate for sure, we
Yes.
noticed that during COVID that has that kind of that whole thing has been uh, up in the air, and we're really recognizing that people on the street were in dire need of supports. And so AVI, along with other agencies, of course, but they really stepped up to be able to help community.
They certainly have. And when we even look at the negative impacts of COVID on the healthcare system and for women alone, doctors weren't seeing people or patients within their facilities, right? So, if you're on the streets without a place to go, without a phone to connect virtually with your doctor, what do you do? And the hospitals are at capacity. So thank goodness that ABI, they have their doors open and they're able to support women within the community for many health needs.
Absolutely, including even like food programs. Like, as I understand it, they've been, walking the streets and actually giving out to people some just basic necessities. And from a women's perspective, those basic necessities have to do with period products, have to do with,
Mhm.
not just the nutritional side of things, but actually just the maintenance of their own dignities, right? As women.
Well, if you think about ourselves, we're fortunate to have a job, a roof over our
Correct.
heads, a
Yeah.
safe place to lay our heads. We know what's coming every month. And imagine living on the streets and not having the means to take care of your physical self on a monthly basis.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
Women go through so much within a month with their own physical body, and to have to go without is unimaginable. And you mentioned that they're meeting people on the streets with food and feminine hygiene products. This is just a start, and it's like, how do we provide more? So the opportunity to meet with AVI and create this breakfast for the community to come together and really understand where we're sitting here in Nanaimo and how vulnerable women are in this current state is it's going to be so great. And just to think, to come together, hear what's happening, and make a difference, like have that ability to make a difference instead of sitting down and saying, what can I do? Well, here's a great opportunity.
Yeah, it's a simple opportunity too. People are I know that financially people are struggling right now. Everybody is. And
Exactly.
as I mentioned, lots of people are one paycheck away from finding that they could very well be impacted by poverty because certainly compared to what they had been prior. Lots of people are losing their jobs. There's lots of jobs that are out there for people, but what people don't understand is those that are homeless or that are in precarious housing have a very challenging time of trying to get themselves out of that situation and up level, right? So that they can actually get the job. These things require people being able to have showers, like to be able to have
Mhm.
some clean clothes, like all of these things. So we're compounding like one problem on top of a problem. Is it the hope that this breakfast will help support people in that dynamic?
Absolutely. If you think about being able to get up and go to work in the morning and
Yeah.
even have food in your stomach to sustain yourself to get to lunchtime, how do you function throughout the day without even having enough nutrition in your body? If you're getting a position in the customer service field, where do you brush your teeth? Where do you freshen up? So the hope is that there's going to be enough resources created throughout this breakfast that we're able to provide a lot more opportunities for women to come in and find safe places to stay and work within programs that may be set up through ABI.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't take a lot of money to make that happen, but it takes a combined effort to make that happen. So not just the
Certainly.
programs at AVI, but that connection to be able to deliver those resources and get people to where they need to be in an effective manner. But I'm curious, I always talk about the programs and things like that, but there's something to be said about why we get involved in these kinds of issues. So if you don't mind, could we just like before we like we're going to get into the potatoes. There's lots and lots of room for us to discuss this whole conversation, but what brought you to this conversation? What brought you to the table for helping women in particular for this role, for this breakfast and you know what I mean.
I do. So I think it's so great, Kathy, because, I live a life of giving back. I'm a very empathetic person and
Yeah.
I have two children myself. And, you know, we've moved throughout different communities within BC, and just seeing the needs of the just different impacts that are that are happening within communities. When I came to Nanaimo, it was really apparent that there is a lack of resources,
Yeah.
and having a family where resources are needed. I have two children myself who required supports and therapies for different abilities. And I think, you know, we're in a city of great opportunity, but yet there's not much available. And if there is, the wait lists are so long.
Yeah.
So when I was presented with the opportunity to join with Dean to become a part of Shine, it really captured my heart right from, like, it was just like an anchor stuck me down. It was like, this is it. Like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And just being able to learn about Nanaimo as a community and giving back,
Yeah.
what better reward is that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I Shine 2022 was my first exposure to an event of that kind of magnitude ever being around in Nanaimo. We're so delighted that Shine 2023 is well underway in the planning stages. And so there's plenty of opportunity for us to talk more about Shine actually coming up as well.
Mhm.
The part though that struck me in what you said though was when we talk about, you know, the resources and the wait lists. The wait list, the need is so exponentially large compared
Yes.
to the ability to be able to support people within community. And yet we can actually do that with doing a monthly donation of like 20 bucks a month. For like $20 a month doesn't seem like a lot, but when you put 500 people at 20 bucks a month together, you suddenly have enough meat and potatoes to actually be able to create an impact and start the building of resources. And that was kind of the premise behind the Red Heart Breakfast to start with, wasn't it?
It is. And, you know, when you look at what is needed for the women within Nanaimo, and people say, well, they need food and they need feminine hygiene products and they need this and that and the other. I think what is missed a lot too is they need healing and they
Yes.
need support in overcoming all the obstacles that they have faced within their life, and having a support system that is there for them.
Yes.
You know, the trauma is a huge piece of this, and trauma affects everybody. There's not one person I don't know that trauma hasn't affected. And I think it's really important to recognize that trauma isn't just, you know, you've experienced some horrible accident in your life. Trauma can be minor to major.
Yeah, and every individual's capacity to deal with trauma, particularly as it relates to multiple traumas. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I'm perfectly comfortable with being transparent about my life. I don't do it for voyeuristic purposes. But there was a time in my life, particularly when I was leaving a very difficult relationship in my life, where I found myself sleeping in my car. I found myself in that kind of homeless sort of situation. I found myself having to figure out where I was going to go next. And I was on my own in that environment for a few days. And it was only a few days, but it was enough that it reminded me of the absolute fear that's attached to being on the street as a woman. And I was a mature woman at the time. I wasn't in my early 20s, which a lot of our homeless people are. A lot of people really, what I think our community forgets is that people don't choose to be homeless. They don't
Yeah.
choose to be on the street. Sometimes, as you pointed out earlier in the conversation, it's the result of violence or, you know, the decision. It's better to live on the street for some people than to go home to whatever that environment was in the first place. And so I just really want to add some light to that, that this is not something that happens to them over
No,
there, right? This is something that
exactly.
happens to anybody could be a victim of this situation.
And you know, I really appreciate you being transparent and sharing that. And I think it really allows for our community to recognize, like when you said, it doesn't happen to them over there, because who is them?
That's
Them
right.
could be your sister, right? It could be your brother.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just women, but this breakfast is surrounding the needs of helping women. But you could be working with someone right now that they're going home, and their home is, like you said, a car, right? I've worked with youth in my career that they have chosen to be on the streets because it's a better situation than being at home. And when I say chosen, it's not their choice. It's just their reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like they
nobody
don't.
chooses the street in that regard. When
No,
I say, when we say choice, it's about the choice of the two evils. It's that kind
exactly.
of, it's that, it's, I've lost the word that I'm looking for, but it's the conflict within self. My conflict that I have with myself is, do I stay in this situation or do I get out of the situation? And if I get out of the situation, these are the options that I have in this moment. Sometimes those options turn into longer periods because then we deal with multiple traumas, right? You get on the street and then something else comes. It's like something happens. Let's talk a little. I'm not, again, I don't want to break this open for the idea of being voyeuristic in people's lives, but rather in educating our community, because it's very easy to judge somebody on the street when they haven't walked the walk. It's very easy. Do you know what I'm saying?
It is so easy. And I think many of us just do it by nature. We've grown up in a lifestyle of there's those people and then there's other people. And I think we really need to move away from that and like let's just drop the stigma. Like let's just
Yes.
get it out because that is what's hurting our communities, and it's hurting people being able to get out of the situations that they're in. Like if your homelessness and your warm blanket for the night is a shot of some drug going into your arm, and that's what's going to make you feel safe and secure for the night, then that's what you have. Some of these people don't have a blanket, they don't have anything. And to just not sit there and think about their trauma over and over again, it's
Well, how do you
it's
how do you get over yourself? How do you get over your situation or your lot in life when there's hopelessness? Like, how do you get out of that? You
well
mean,
and
go ahead.
well and that's it. When we look at going back to our conversation on um services and wait times, and we look at the costs of therapies, counseling, if you're homelessness, who has $160 an hour to be getting support to work through your trauma or to find someone to help you get up from where you are? If you're in
Yeah,
a deep depression, if you're just lost, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, right? So
yeah.
it's
And the
such a huge.
constant triggering too, like the triggering upon triggering. So the person that is in a homeless situation,
Mhm,
first of all, the trauma of having to suddenly find themselves homeless, and then
mhm.
the trauma of going to ask for help, right?
And we don't like to ask for help.
Nobody wants to ask for help.
No.
Nobody.
And I like to really make it known that, we drive around Nanaimo and we see people standing on the corners asking for money. I saw someone asking for money that on their sign it said, I have a job, I work 2 jobs. I just can't make ends meet. Any support will help. So,
Right?
like
Right?
where's the compassion?
Yeah.
Like the cost of living, the
Yeah.
housing crisis, the wait lists, the amount of money it costs to get services, it's all wrapped up, and it's going to take more than just the city doing something. It's going to be a bigger
It's a
involvement.
much, much bigger conversation, but it begins by taking accountability for the fact that there are people out there that are just that matter. And and it's important, in my opinion, that we recognize that maybe people can't help a lot, but people are choosing not to help now because they are afraid that if they help this, they're actually This is stigmatic. This is nothing to do with the reality. This is just, I am contributing. For example, if I give $10 to that person on the street, they're just going to go buy a bottle. They're just going to go and shoot up. They're just going to go smoke some pot. And, like, I'm not going to continue to do that. I might give them this, or I might do that. Right. So we're adding to the stigma by that train of thought, first and foremost. Right. That's not actually the situation. As you pointed out so eloquently, there are people that are dealing with not even having a blanket. So if they're shooting up to keep warm, I'm not actually facilitating that choice for that person in wanting to give $10 or $20 to help out. I'm actually hopefully giving them the stability so that they don't have to go and do that. Does that make sense? It's how do we frame that conversation? Is it our cup half full, or is it our cup half empty? I choose to think it's full.
And I think that's a really great outlook to have and a take to have on it. I've seen going throughout the city where some people are receiving money and you see them go across to the corner store right away to get food. Or now you see other people giving sandwiches. And that's something that I've always talked about with my kids is we're going to get 2 loaves of bread. We're going to make sandwiches, or 3 loaves of bread, however many. I mean, what is that? $5? And we're going to just go hand it out to
not anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be $5, but not
yeah. But let's take that into account.
Yes, yes,
prices
yes.
with inflation, it's gone up. So if we're struggling as people
Working
who have
adults,
exactly, then
yeah.
how are these other individuals who are just trying to get onto a different path? How are they supposed to do it without the support of the community?
And that's where the Red Heart Breakfast is taking the initiative. It's like, okay, wait a minute, we might not be able to solve all of the problems in Nanaimo, but we sure can give a leg up.
Certainly. And you mentioned before, people don't choose this. There's some people, like, these are just very difficult situations. They're unfortunate events, and they're looking for a way to change it. We need to be able to support our community. Everybody's wanting to do something, and this is what we've brought, this opportunity for people to come and join us, hear what initiatives can be taking place, and give back. And if you think about donating $20, $30 a month for a year, how much more is that $20, $30 a month going to go than $5 or $2 to someone on the corner of the street? I'm not saying don't do that.
No, of course not. Of course not. But there's something to be said about the collective ability to create something of essence, something that makes sense. So we're going to actually talk about that more. We're going to break a few more things open in this conversation. If you've just joined us, you're listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Lately, we know that there's a lot of stuff going on with community, and a lot of people really need a lot of help right now. And the forum of Act 3 isn't necessarily to choose one charity over another charity over another, but rather as an opportunity to educate each other on what's going on in our own backyards. I am privileged to be able to work in this beautiful city, and this show, to be able to share it everywhere, including on iHeartRadio and on Spotify, as well as on our YouTube station. But we encourage, anybody who's listening, even if you don't live in our city, the impacts that are on Vancouver Island, on the Sunshine Coast, and throughout Canada are the same for all of us. And it's important that we reach out and help people as best as we can. And that starts with education. So what I invite you to do right now, you guys, if you're driving down the side of the road, no worries, just, be prepared to pull over in the next few minutes so that you can write down the information about the Red Heart Breakfast. Make sure, or check us out on the YouTube station. All the stuff will be in the chat box below. So you'll be able to do all of that. But think about, someone in you that you love. Think about someone in your family, for example, that might just be on that brink, that might just need a leg up, a hand up, a support. And think about that person. And then remember, our community is full of people like that. Let's come together as a community and do something really, really wonderful. The Red Heart Breakfast might just be the way to do that. So thank you so much if you just tuned into Act 3. My guest today is Allison Hexter. She's with the Red Heart Breakfast and Shine 2023. And I'm so glad that she's here on the show today. Thanks again, Allison, for being here. You know, to me, this is such an important, it's close to my heart, like it's really close to my heart. Not only, no, I wasn't homeless for long periods of time. No, I wasn't, in a situation where so many of our community family members are, friends are. But I also am very uniquely aware of how challenging life can be when you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to help people to not, if nothing else, walk away from this conversation today thinking about life a little bit differently, that our daughter could be that next person on that street, our aunt, our sister, our mother. In all fairness, the rising population of older adult women on the street is exponentially grown. These are often career women who've been working for years and suddenly they were rent evicted, and they've gone from having, an affordable rental to not being able to pay the $2,500 or the $1,800 because that was for some people a whole paycheck. How do we help people? How can we do that?
Well, and I think that being able to come together as a community and recognizing that, this is not a choice for anyone.
No.
And that is like, this is something that we keep saying throughout our conversation, that it's not a choice. And I think that's where it's going to really stop the stigma. I have friends who their children have experienced homelessness, and there's mental health involved, and they're trying so hard to create an opportunity, but then when you're down and you're out, like you're just feeling like the whole world is against you and you just don't have any place to go. Creating an opportunity through agencies like AVI, who are meeting people on the streets and providing different resources to them, it's going to create
Yeah. It's the
opportunities.
ripple effect. It's like you drop one drop in and then you watch that ripple effect kind of expand and expand and expand and expand. And it becomes generational, right? That generation of giving. Do you think that people overall are ready to come together and celebrate each other, lifting each other up in our community right now? Or do you think that there are barriers to that? What do you think holds people back?
I think, definitely the stigma that surrounds homelessness, I think that really holds people back. And I think the unknown, why should I do this? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Not truly understanding the situations behind the individuals living on the streets,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the community is ready to make a change. I truly do. You feel it, like you can feel this vibration within the community of, let's get our community together and let's get people making a difference. So it's there. So let's educate ourselves and have a really strong understanding and foundation to be able to start making, like you said, that ripple effect. That's going to be change.
So that's a perfect segue to talking about the event itself, right? So let's tell our listeners, when is it going to be? What's it going to be about? How do people get tickets? Like, let's kind of break that apart. And if you haven't gone to get your piece of paper and a pen to write this down, come on now, hurry up, go get it, because we've got stuff to talk about here. So, like, what's the here and the why and and what can people expect when they go to the event?
So the event is going to be taking place on May 10th at the Vancouver Island Convention Center. So it's right downtown. 9
Parking is
a.m.
excellent.
Parking is right there and so cheap.
So cheap. The
I've
cheapest
never
parking
been.
in our city.
Yes. And so it's, like I said, it's at the Vancouver Island Conference Center, and 9 till 10:30, you're going to get to come in and just be with your colleagues, your friends, your sisters, your mothers, your brothers, your employers, and listen to some impactful statements from a couple of speakers that we have coming in. I don't want to give too much away on that.
Of course, totally understandable.
And
we'll keep the element of surprise for people.
I like to do that.
Yes, me too.
And in order to get tickets, you can email us at info@togetherweshine.ca. And we do have a Facebook page, which is Shine Vancouver Island. So you can go onto that, and we have a link available within our Facebook page. And then it is posted on Eventbrite under Red Heart Breakfast. So you can just go right on there and register. Do know the registration's free. We just need to know how many people are going to be coming. And then when you attend the event, that's when we're going to request a donation from you.
Yeah, and it's important that when we're talking about requesting a donation, we're not looking for, no, please don't get, yes, there's lots of opportunity to put your $5 in for sure. Like, don't misunderstand. But this event, it's not about coming and getting a free breakfast for $5. It's about a long-term commitment to
Yes.
helping someone on the street. That might mean a $20 donation for 12 months. That might mean $20 times 12 for that event, right? Or more. I'm just saying, like a base level, like we're talking about having a commitment to donating to the cause for at least a year, or a lump sum donation of value that is reasonable, you know, like that sounds terrible when you're asking for money. I'm going to just be very transparent about it as a call to action. $5 will go a long way. Yes, it will. And we appreciate that. I know that that will be of value, but the premise behind this is ongoing support, right?
Exactly. So, and this is something that I've made a challenge with my own kids, that I will avoid getting my specialty coffee and my treat twice a month in order to give back. So, you go and get those specialty coffees, what have you. There's your one donation for the month, and you're helping yourself, first of all,
Of course.
right? And you're helping someone else. So it's a challenge and a task I've taken on with my own kids, and I'm challenging all my friends and colleagues to do the same.
You know, I love the accountability clause, right? Sort of that, okay, I challenge my friends to do this. I've got a few people in my world I'll be definitely challenging, and I will be at that breakfast. So I do want to see people there. And I'm like delighted to be able to bring on some kind of a challenge to our listeners of Act 3. Like, come on, people. I'm in, let's go. Because I know that it's very, very important for us to come together and just sort of to create that impact. And, you know, if it is $5, it's $5 a month, right? For a period of time. If it is $10, it's $10 a month for a period of time, or a donation that will, you know, I mean, and again, we're trying to do something that will help systemically change the face of what's looking for women downtown. We want to make a better place for them and create a program that has some stability. Is that right?
Exactly. So, and I do want to make sure that our listeners know that all the funds that are raised at the breakfast are going to be used to improve the lives at-risk women in our community.
Yes.
The hope of AVI is to address all the pressing concerns that we have within the community. And we've talked about this, like nutrition, personal hygiene, housing assistance, medical support.
Yeah.
Every individual wants to be healthy, and we have a lot to learn from them too, and I think
Yes.
it's really, really important to have that understanding behind what has made them who they are,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
can we come together and help.
Yeah, you know, I'm inspired by the courageousness of women, and the ability for women to come together in unity to support other women who are struggling. And I know that we do have the Women's Center is no longer part of our community, unfortunately, as at least I'm not aware if the Women's Center is still in existence. Please let me know and correct me right away, because it was my understanding that it closed a while ago. Women helping women have done an extraordinary job in our community. And, you know, I just want to do a quick shout out for the incredible, great work that they have done. You know, there are many, many opportunities to give in this community and to support women in this community. But I think that the the impact and the overall well-being of women on this street is largely underserved, even with supports. And so there's room for as much care as possible and education as possible, to deal with some of our most challenged women, because as we talked about earlier, they're not coming out, they're hiding in the woodwork, they're hiding for safety, they're hiding from trauma, they're hiding from any number of different situations. And the winter time, even though we're coming into spring, it's still very, very cold. People are sleeping under plastic trash bags or in garbage cans or in doorways or in areas. And I just, a mother with a small child who is on the street with their children, and this is not an uncommon occurrence. We're seeing more and more and more of it as these exponential cost increases continue to rise with no end in sight. We have to find another way.
We do. And, I think it's really important to recognize too that, if to make the choice to leave a volatile situation or to try to make a better opportunity for yourself, it's a vulnerable choice and it's a scary choice. And I think the thing is that, we hope as women, we hope that every decision we're making is going to be the right decision. We're human. We've never lived here before, right?
So
And
true, so true. Like you said, like when somebody is in that situation, they've never been in that environment before.
mm-mm. And a lot, imagine if growing up in a scenario of poverty and all you're trying to do is create a better outcome for your own children and you're trying so hard and like you mentioned, um, losing your housing because of renovations. Like, where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah. And if you have low self-esteem, if you have uh, a problem with a soft skill set, not necessarily having some of the opportunities in life earlier in life, the minimum wage job, which is there's nothing more wonderful than working. But for somebody who's working and has children, the amount of money it costs to put children in daycare, in order for them to get the minimum wage job, these are complex concerns, complex conversations. And so just the idea that somebody's on the street, it's not that cut and dry. It's not that simple. There's so much more to the dialogue.
And something that I've learned throughout this experience is the wage gap between men and women,
Oh my
and
God, it's still there so abundantly.
the ability to rise within your employment, right? Like we're not seen as equal. And even though some people like to say, oh, men and women are equal, well, there is still that gap. And how do we close that? And how do we make it the same?
Yeah, and I think as that is part of the conversation, so too is the conversation when it comes to people who are making different choices in their life and the generational trauma that goes with poverty. If if you've grown up on welfare and you've fought the system and you've gotten off welfare, it doesn't mean you don't have a welfare mentality. It doesn't mean that you don't have that fear of losing again or scarcity issues or, have some complex dynamics that go with that. And very often young women today who had perhaps had families where their parents were on welfare, those young women may have had some challenges in understanding, well, what does a budget really look like? They didn't have necessarily the training or the supports in place for them to make different decisions so that they could in fact have stronger and better lives. And women have been marvelous at mentoring each other. We're very, very good at mentoring each other, but there are some women who have never been mentored. They've never never been given the gift of someone being able to sit with them and say, hey, I see that you're struggling right now. Let's help you, rather than, hey, what's the matter with you? What's your problem? Why can't you get this? Why don't you do this or that? So, we're adding to the shame. And when you have that as already the foundation, or you've come through a lot of difficult situations, people are very, very hesitant to share that they need help. So they go deeper into the woods, if that makes any sense.
It does. And it comes back to vulnerability and shame.
So true.
And, in school, we look at our teenagers in these days, and everything is on your smartphone. You're not learning the foundational of mathematics to learn how to budget. How much is it going to cost me for like that loaf of bread or an apple or groceries for the week? I'm teaching my kids myself how to budget and how to pay taxes, and then just being on the beginning of April, and we have higher taxes that have just come in. So again, there's another barrier causing a setback. And even though it is supposed to be helping the economy, it is harming the people that are trying to improve their lives.
Yeah, it's sort of one step forward and three steps behind, one step forward and three steps behind. So initiatives like Red Heart Breakfast will create the opportunity for there to be some foundational funding. And with the management of AVI, which has been exceptional on Vancouver Island, they've been able to take those dollars, maximize those dollars, and be able to create long-term results out of those dollars. Is it the be all end all fix? Of course not. There's lots and lots of opportunities for fixing things. But the idea behind the Red Heart Breakfast is to get that infusion of money available so that there can be a program that's created to really help support the people that need it the most at this time.
And, I do want to say, it's TD Bank is one of our corporate sponsors for this event.
Yay! Thank you.
And without them, we wouldn't be able to donate all the funds that we receive straight to impacting the lives of at-risk women. So we are beyond grateful for the support of TD Bank and being able to be with AVI and just bring the community together. And it's like we said, there's reasons behind homelessness. It's not a choice. And we need to really look at the climate that we're in surrounding mental health, surrounding addiction, surrounding resources and needs, and really just break down that stigma and recognizing that this could be your daughter next week. It could be your mother, like we've talked about, right?
Yeah. And I know that we've emphasized that a lot, but I think that it's really important that we recognize. For me, when I think about the Red Heart Breakfast, and I think about the potential that we could probably do so much work within the women in our community, or help the women in our community who are at risk. There's a difference between somebody who needs, something here or there, or, a little bit of extra support. And there's also that complex component where people need counseling, that they need to be able to sit with somebody to kind of get through their trauma, to be able to go on to the next level. They need, job skills. They need physical, apparel to be able to, they need clothes so that they can function. They need, in some cases, not all, but certainly feminine hygiene products and things like that. And we do know that there are resources within the community where we can come together. I know that there are agencies that provide the period promise, and there's, there are things out there for women, but at the end of the day, there's some unique niches here for people that are in their most vulnerable stages. And I think that that's part of the focus, is to help in this unique niche.
Exactly. And I think it's really important to look at the flip side of this is we want to help and we want to come together. And, being able to provide for the women within our community and healing through trauma, being on the streets, women are facing a lot more volatile situations than than men within the community. You know, like there's sexual abuse happening. There's so you know, if they're coming onto the streets with trauma, then they're creating more trauma.
Well, and on top of that, although this is a difficult conversation, and I think that it's relevant, but I think it's relevant to the conversation, is that, you know, some people do have to turn to sexual violence in order to be able to get that meal, or to again, not a choice, right? Whether they're being sexually assaulted, or whether or not they're choosing to move into the profession of the sexual workplace. I don't know the exact term of it. I apologize for that on my part. But at the end of the day, you know, people again are making decisions based on fear, or making decisions based on you know, an unstable and difficult uh situation for which they likely in many cases have had little to no control over. And so I think that people need to look at that as well, that there's a lot of misunderstanding behind the people that are on the street at this time.
And I think recognizing that it's not just older women, and there are many young adults on the streets. There's
Many.
youth like 14, 15, 16, and there is not one person out there that can tell me that a 14-year-old is on the streets because of choice.
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. You know, a 14-year-old girl is making a decision because she is believing, for whatever reason, that her life is safer on the street than it is in the environment that she's living in. And that's not to say either that there are bad parents out there that are just, you know, have somehow they're responsible, or they're being blamed for things that, you know, is going on. That's, you know, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole other situation.
It is, yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's still an awful lot of people that these young women are not wanting to share with their families what's been going on, or they're not wanting to, you know what I mean? That, again, that vulnerability aspect of it. We don't know what we don't know.
And it's time to stop being scared to ask. That's coming into this community, and it's happening in every community, you know,
Of
and
course.
we need to be transparent on that. We're not just signaling out
Our communities.
Nanaimo.
Yeah, for sure.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I think that we're seeing it more now because it's coming to light a lot more. There's more action taking place. And, you know, to be able to come together at the Red Heart Breakfast and have conversations with the people on the ground, meeting the individuals who are in need of support, it's really going to create that understanding, that education, and empathy.
Yes, and I also want to say, in light of AVI as well, is that they operate under trauma-informed practice. And there's been a lot of, you know, we're seeing a lot of stuff with Gabor Mate recently. You know, Gabor Mate, there was an event that we had here in on the Rock recently, sponsored by Volunteer Nanaimo, which was extraordinary. But I come from Vancouver, where Gabor Mate is, like, you know, the spokesperson regarding the East End of Vancouver. And so people are often, you know, missing in these conversations is that they think, well, this isn't Vancouver, like you're in the East End Vancouver, that's where, like, there's a whole bunch of, like, that's a whole dynamic in itself. And they're like, we're Nanaimo, like, we're not seeing that kind of stuff. But that's a fallacy. We're seeing it all the time. It is in pockets all over our city, and we're starting to see more and more and more of those pockets, as not being a big city, all the way up and down Vancouver Island, whether you're in Courtenay, Comox, Duncan. The homeless population in Duncan and Courtenay is at least as big as ours, and in some cases larger. Like, this is a problem that is everywhere. But coming to it from a trauma-enforced lens really does help to create an opportunity for facilitating some solutions. But we need to be open. We need to have these kinds of events like the Red Heart Breakfast, where the transparency comes alive.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm very excited to see the community coming together and learning and recognizing that, you know, through their generosity, they're going to be making a difference.
A huge difference. So perfect time for a call to action. So if you have just tuned in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7, thank you for tuning in. Happy Monday, everybody. And I know if you're watching us any other day of the week or in the middle of the night while you're just surfing away on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. We're super glad. Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way. That's a tiny little call to action, but I always appreciate it. More importantly, it's important for people to go to the Red Heart Breakfast event that's happening on May 10th. And so once again, I'm going to ask our guest, Allison Hexter, to give us some information on that as we're closing out the program, which just blows my mind. It happened so fast. Allison, once again, how do people get tickets? How do people get involved? What can they do? And if they can't, by the way, sorry to interrupt you one more. If they can't go on the 10th, is there anything else that they can do? Like, how can they get involved despite and in spite that date? Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's many ways that you can get involved and help. Emailing us at info@togetherweshine.ca and just letting us know what your hopes are. We'll reach out to you. Going onto our Facebook page, I'm going to say that again, Shine Vancouver Island. We do have the link on our Facebook page for the event. On Eventbrite, Red Heart Breakfast, you can register to come to the breakfast right then and there. And again, it's happening May 10th, 9 till 10:30. It's a short time out of your morning. It lets you drop your kids off at school, come in and engage with some members of the community. And of course, if you're not able to attend and you still want to help, please email us at info@togetherweshine.ca. Another opportunity too is if you want to attend and you can't, send someone in your place and create that opportunity for them.
Yeah. And, creating opportunity is what this is all about, right? It's giving people an opportunity to shine.
Exactly.
I can't help myself. And also to get people to go to Shine 2023. And we're going to save that for another show. And I just want to, there are two more things I want to do before we close today's conversation. I always love the life lesson, right? I love the piece of wisdom that comes from that. So as we're thinking about that just for a moment, I'm just going to do one more shout out. So that's one. And the second thing is, look, the Red Heart Breakfast is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful way for you to participate in helping some really, really tough stuff here in our community. But it's also really important that while you're thinking about the tough stuff in our community, that you plant the legacy for the future. And so I'm going to just drop this up there for you. There is an opportunity, always for us to take this forward. And so understanding who is in your community is a really, really great way to begin. AVI is an extraordinary organization. They do a lot in our community and they're unsung heroes during COVID-19, as are the many agencies that we have within our city. And so it's a great opportunity for you to take the time and get to know who's who in the zoo and think about things that are important to you and how they impact our community, because together we shine. So think about what it is that we can do together and find a way to make this happen right now. So my guest has been Allison Hexter. Allison is with Together We Shine Vancouver Island. I know I did that wrong. Dean is going to shoot me for that. Listening right now, and I can feel him raising his brows and laughing in the background. I do also want to do a shout out to Dean Tholner, who's become a very dear friend. I admire him more and more every single day for what he's brought to this community. Shine 2022 brought a wonderful amount of money to our community in the likes we had not seen in a really long time. He's doing it again as the backbone behind the Red Heart Breakfast and the backbone behind Together We Shine and Shine 2023. So, Dean, we love you. Thank you for coming to our community. We know that you came from the mainland. We welcome you with open arms and thanks for everything that you've done. Allison, we are very lucky people, you and I.
We sure are. And I really want to thank you for having me on your show and being able to support such a wonderful cause. And
such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. What's the life lesson? What's the wisdom that you want to share with everybody as we end our conversation today?
Oh gosh, that's a big question, Kathy.
I know.
I think the life lesson that I have for myself and something I'm teaching my kids to recognize is it's not as it appears, and you don't know. You
Yeah,
don't know the truth. People don't know my truth. People don't know your truth. And, have an ear and use your empathy, be
yeah,
compassionate
yeah,
and be vulnerable.
yeah. Today was a very vulnerable conversation. We talked about a lot of stuff. And I hope that the people that are listening to today's broadcast really understand the impact of what it might be like for someone who's walking on the street tonight at, 11 o'clock at night, trying to figure out where she's going to sleep. And so my prayer is that we all just take a little bit of time to figure this out, because we've got to find an answer. And AVI and the Red Heart Breakfast are going to help try to shed at least a little bit of light and a little bit of funding to kind of alleviate some of that problem. Thanks for being on the program today, Allison. It was so nice to get to be with you for this hour. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for another episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. It's also another episode that you saw on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you are listening to us on iHeartRadio or Spotify, thanks for tuning in, and we'll bring out a new episode really soon. And if you're really curious about what's happening on Act 3, don't forget you can watch us on Shaw Spotlight on Shaw Cable 4. We're working on our brand new episode, and guess what? Red Heart Breakfast information is going to be on that one. So you'll want to tune in to Shaw Cable 4. We're filming next week. In the meantime, thank you so much for being with us today. That's all I got for you for this episode of Act 3. We'll see you real soon. See you Monday. Bye for now.